This is the Sunday stream opening song because the other song is copyrighted. La 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 la. Oh look, here comes Dog Cat Fox.
Hi, Sky.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday stream, the stream I do on Sundays because Sunday is the day to stream on Sundays. Hope you're all doing well this morning. Joining me today, special guest, my friend from across the pond, the Brit Bong from another mom, Irate Alex. Good morning, Irate Alex.
Oh, good afternoon. It's this afternoon here in Brit Bongia. So good afternoon, Scribe. I hope you're well, sir.
I'm doing great, and I'm very happy to have you on here. For those of you that don't know, this is Irate Alex, another OG YouTuber. Actually is the reason I ever decided to try YouTube in the first place. Long story. But we've been meaning to try to get on a show together for a while now, and the stars aligned, which is appropriate given the subject matter today. And
Yes.
so here he is. So if you don't know about Irate Alex, be sure to check out his channel. I didn't have the opportunity to put a link to his channel in the description before this. It was all sort of like last minute impulsive. So I'm sure someone helpful in the chat will give his link out there, and I'll be sure to add it after the show's over with. So, but how are you doing, Alex?
I'm doing well. All the better for seeing you, Scribe. It's seems like it's been, I don't know when was the last time you and I were on a stream together?
I honestly couldn't say. It's been a long time. I think maybe a monkey stream or something a while back. I don't know. It's been far too long is what it is.
Yeah, I could completely concur there. It's been ages since I've spoken to you. How have you been? What have you been up to, Scribe?
Oh, well, let's see. I got my teeth straightened out, you know, so I don't look like you guys anymore. Let's see what else happened. Gosh, I mean, it's you know, the last couple of years in particular, not to say that the years previous haven't sort of like munged together over time, but it's just been kind of a blur being locked up and life changing, and now work being remote instead of going to the office. Let's see, my parents are older, my sister's smarter, and I'm maybe a little wiser for the last couple of years. I don't know. It's nothing. I mean, I wish I could tell you. It's sort of like talking to my parents. They ask me, "So how are you doing? What's going on?" Like, I don't know what to say. I've been doing the routine, working, YouTube, trying to. I don't want to sound like some old crotchety man or something, but I tell you what, the effects of age are starting to show more. And I know that you're quite a young man compared to me. But
it's funny you say that, Scribe, because that's one of the fun things about my particular situation is rapid aging. I've always been, as you know, a little bit of an airhead type of guy. But it's far worse now than it ever was before, and there's a lot of white hair these days. So
no, like the gray hairs. I mean, I'm fortunate that my hair is like both dark and silver. I got sort of that pepper, salt and pepper thing going, and but it's the like my family, my sister and I in particular, have always been relatively blessed in genes that we don't look our age, so to speak. Like, you know, I see people on some shows or some TV shows and they say they're 35 or something. I'm thinking, that's a rough 35. And I look at myself and say, I'm almost 44. And I'm like, I'm not all right. I'm not all right. I'm still all right. But all the same, like little things like I start getting a little ache in my side when I get up in the morning, has to work it out. And I don't know. It's just it's all the little things, I suppose. But let me get in. Let's move on to other happier things for a second. Like, who's joining us this morning as two old men start whining about their personal problems? Noah Asensio, good morning. The Magister, good morning. Rotten Corpse, good morning. Miranda Stone, good morning. And everybody, thanks Miranda Stone for providing the fundraiser links to our friends Moonshock and Angry Illinoisian. Those are pinned to the top of the chat box. If you guys have a couple of bucks to spare to send their way, they've had some medical emergencies that have affected their families. If you can't donate, that's fine. But if you can share those out on social media, that would as well be appreciated. Mike R, good morning. Mike Savage, Blarg, Derek LaRue, as always, thank you so much for your continued support and generosity. I really do appreciate it. Hope you're having a good Sunday. Robert Pincus, good morning. Resolute Germ, Corey Suzuki, Funtime Bats, Shadow Claw, Rambler, Nikki XO, Who else is here? Simon Wilkins, Brittany Holland, and then the chat jumped because, of course, it did. Advocatus Diaboli, Ancha S.A. Is it Ancha? Ancha, did I get that right? I was like trying to get new names right.
Just refer to her as Anne. Scribe.
Anne. All right, Anne.
Yeah,
good morning. Super Cooper TV.
She's a subscriber of mine.
All right.
Yeah.
She's an import, as it were.
Yeah.
Old guy gamer. Good morning. Bridget. Good morning. TC. Good morning. And I think I got everybody. I hope I did. If I missed you, if you're lurking, if you're in the future, good morning. But as I was telling Alex before the stream began, if you've seen my YouTube page, up on the title bar, it says commentary, criticism, and Moonbase. And I realized yesterday that I don't really talk about Moonbase all that much, but there has been Moonbase news within the last 24 to 48 hours that I just felt like I had to share. And so I thought I'd do a little compilation of news stories and tidbits about Moonbase. For those of you that don't know, as you may be importing from the Alex world, I live on the moon. In a moon base with Dogcat Fox. You know Dogcat Fox, don't you, Alex?
I actually don't.
Oh, okay. Well, let me introduce.
Wowie, wow.
There you go. That's Dogcat Fox, everybody.
And that's my voice. So.
That is your voice. Yes, yeah. I have a collection of those. You want to hear my favorite? One of my favorites, though.
Oh no!
Let's see.
Go on.
Okay.
Was that Drunkle?
No, that was Tailed.
Oh, yeah, Tailed.
Yeah, I got Tailed to a couple of them. And then that one, whenever I don't have them labeled like exactly. I just have Tailed 1 and Tailed 2, and I always forget which is which. And sometimes when I hit that one, the way he says that just cracks me the hell up. But anyway, so yes, I live on the moon with Dogcat Fox, and I apparently have some neighbors incoming in the near future.
Yeah.
So
the TikTok people,
Yes, the TikTok Nation. TikTok Nation is coming to be my neighbors up on the moon. So I've got 4 articles dealing with various parts or aspects to Moonbase, and I'll go over them as we go. And I'll be interested to see what Alex has to say, because I can't classify myself as a scientist or necessarily a moon expert, even though that's where I live. But it'll be interesting to get some co-pilot insight on this.
I mean, you're just going to get me asking about if there's HEs up there, to be honest, right?
Hey, Wallace Gromit and otherwise, who knows? Let's see. China could start building a moon base with lunar soil bricks in 5 years amid NASA fears of a moon territory dispute.
Oh, no.
Moon wars, everybody. Moon wars.
As if America wasn't already engaged in some form of trade war with China as it was.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So lunar soil. So admittedly, I do not know exactly what the consistency of the material on the moon is. I've always been led to believe it's fairly dusty, brittle, not exactly building material. So I'll be curious to find out. Do they mean actually building a quarry somehow to make bricks, or are they talking about taking the lunar material and mixing it with paste or something to make Adobe type bricks? I
was just wondering how they would go about doing it. What is a lunar soil brick exactly made of, other than
exactly? Let's see. We got the bullet points there. Okay, China wants to begin building a base on the moon with the help of lunar soil within 5 years. Chinese media reported. Can I get this ad to go away? Of course I can't. All right, how about I just pause it? The news comes just months after NASA Administrator Bill Nelson warned that China may want to claim resource-rich areas of the moon for itself. Because I think there's minerals and helium-3 conceivably as you can mine from the moon, but I don't know how easy that is to do. At the first conference on the topic, more than 100 scientists from domestic universities gathered to discuss plans for the country's crewed moon base at Huazhong University of Science and Technology in Wuhan.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, get ready for the first moon plague. On Saturday, according to reporting by the South China Morning Post, an English language newspaper based in Hong Kong. Ding Luyan, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that, an expert from the Chinese Academy of Engineering, said in an interview with local newspaper Chanjiang Daily that China could be ready to place the first brick on the moon within 5 years, per the SCMP. Quote, we'll be using real moon soil to make the first brick right there on the moon. Okay, so you're going to manufacture the bricks on the moon using the soil. So we're talking like some kind of adobe kind of deal.
I assume it's going to be mixed in with resources they have brought with them.
But if you could bring the amount of material you'd need to mix with the soil, why wouldn't you just bring building materials? Unless I like say, what are they using for the glue of it?
Yeah.
Ding has been working on a robot named Chinese Super Mason. That's
a rubbish name.
Super Mason.
You couldn't just call it Bob the Builder or something, give it a cute name or something like that. They do Chinese Super Mason. That sounds terrible. It sounds really bad.
Well, it sounds like a bad translation of like a Saturday morning Chinese superhero show for children or something.
I would watch one episode.
Yeah, probably. Chinese Super Mason that can turn lunar soil into brick. Okay, how? These could be used to make habitats on the moon using traditional Chinese building techniques. Save for the fact there's no air.
What's traditional exactly about any of this?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. NASA has its own plan to build a permanent base on the lunar South Pole. The agency plans to mine resources like water ice on the moon in order to create fuel, water, and even oxygen on site. Okay, so so you could go to the moon, you could mine water and then mix it into the soil, or okay, but NASA doesn't have a clear timeline for building that base yet. Of course it doesn't. NASA never gets. I've been waiting for moon base since I was like 2. It has set an ambitious goal of landing astronauts on the lunar surface in 2025, but construction could come years after that. For China, it looks like they plan to build first and send humans later. Okay, so they're going to send robots to the moon to make the bricks and build the thing and have it ready for people to arrive.
Presumably, I mean, that would kind of make sense, considering that, these craft they send into space wouldn't be able to carry that much stuff, surely, as well as a human crew.
Yeah, I guess they'd have like a separate cargo delivery system first.
In fact, you're the perfect person to even ask this, Scribe. The concept of the space elevator.
Yes.
Is that a doable thing?
Probably not, practically speaking. You've basically just got a giant tether up to like a space platform or something, in geosynchronous orbit with the Earth, because the Earth is moving really fast. And so that pipe, that elevator, it's completely vulnerable to, one breach in the, I'll just call it pipe rather than anything else. One breach in the pipe, you lose all air pressure and the whole thing falls apart and everybody in there dies. It's so tenuous. It's sort of like the Hyperloop.
I guess that people wouldn't be in it, but rather a space elevator leads up to some kind of similar platform to the International Space Station would be possible at all. But it makes perfect sense. There's a lot of debris up there anyway.
Well, not only that, but in order to carry cargo from Earth to, say, just the International Space Station, the weight of the cables that would have to be necessary to carry the things from there would make like the entire thing almost untenable to begin with. There's so many vulnerabilities to it that I don't think it's feasible. Just in practical terms, I don't think it's feasible. I'm sure there are people out there in the chat as well who know this more than I do and could say more professionally. But everything that I've seen and people, I had a coworker who was like crazy about space elevator. Like she was really, really into this concept, and I think she even met like one of the chief proponents of it or some scientist at some convention and was really, really hyped about it. And at the time I was kind of like, could that even work? Of course, she was sure it could. And I just thought, I've been amazed by the kind of advances we've made in technology, the cell phone compared to the communicator from Star Trek, and just things that used to be sci-fi that are now reality. But there's some things that just on the levels of thermal dynamics, I'm not quite sure you're going to be able to overcome. But I could be corrected.
Okay.
Let's see. Quote, it might take us 20 to 30 years or longer to eventually settle down on the moon, but we must start working together now, you told the conference per SCMP. Yeah, if we'd started back in the 60s, we'd already be there. except we lost our eye off the ball there. We could have been there by now. We could have been moving to Mars already.
So this is the second space race, effectively.
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on how realistic China's plan is, because they're talking about like, oh, we're already going to have robots on the moon, building moon bases, and then mining and stuff. NASA's obviously more hesitant to give a date on it. But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of resources on the moon, and if that whole helium-3 energy source thing is true, that could be a game changer, depending. China, the U.S., and the respective allies are vying to get to the moon first this decade. We've already been there. We were there first. We were the first ones there. We just didn't go back. This is not only for the glory and scientific interest. Getting there first could poise either nation to claim territory or set precedent for other practices like resource mining for the new era of exploration on the moon and beyond to Mars. So first off, I was under the impression, and I maybe they'll talk about this in one of the other articles, that the moon was non-territorial something, like nobody could own the moon.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's also the most convenient platform we have in potential Mars missions in the future, since it's effectively gives us a little bit of a jump on sending crews there, other missions and things. That's far in the future, when we can actually have functioning launch installations on the moon to send things off to Mars.
Would you go if that technology and we'd reached that point of engineering? Would you go
to Mars?
Yeah.
If I was willing to say I'm going to die on Mars, because there's many difficulties in like making it. It's not going to be a round trip. It's probably going to be a one-way trip.
Oh, I absolutely understand it would be a one-way trip, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, yes, if the technology and everything, I would. Yeah, I mean. And hopefully before it became something. It's never going to be routine. Space travel is never going to be routine. It's never going to be like, oh, I'm just getting on an Alaska Airlines space jet and taking myself to Mars, as they did in the sci-fi and everything. But as far as adventure, as far as doing something else, although I feel like I'd have to know I was either. It's one of those things. It's like, would I want to go if I hadn't felt like I'd lived a full life on Earth first? Because it's going to be a very lonely time on Mars. There's not going to be other people, other things to do. It's going to be me in a geodesic kind of hut thing, doing experiments and day-to-day labor.
Yeah.
So I guess it all depends on. I don't know. My dreams about where we should or could be probably exceed the reality of what I'd feel comfortable doing in the early, because I don't want to be the beta tester for this.
Oh no, that totally makes sense. That totally makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to be the guy that's like, well, we're going to hammer out some bugs after you get there. Let's see. Quote, "It is a fact. We're in a space race," Nelson previously told Politico. "And it is true that we better watch out that they don't get to a place on the moon under the guise of scientific research. And it is not beyond the realm of possibility that they say, keep out, we're here, this is our territory." Yeah. How are you going to defend it?
That is an interesting question.
Guns?
Yeah, exactly. How are you going to defend that? You can't use weapons like not traditional weapons anyway.
Well, the only other thing is then it causes actions on Earth to disable our ability to travel to the moon. That's the only other way you could do is try to hamstring those kind of things. NASA has tried to get other spacefaring nations on the same page through the Artemis Accords, a non-binding agreement to be peaceful, transparent, cooperative, and to use space resources sustainably as humans expand to the moon and beyond. Yeah, that's not going to happen.
No, it's not.
Human beings, as we know, and competing nations. Yeah, no. A non-binding agreement. Yeah, you guys can't even get on the same page when it comes to non-binding agreements about climate change or nuclear weapons. So, yeah, no. 22 countries have signed the Artemis Accords, but Russia and China are not among them. Surprise, surprise. In any case, NASA is legally prohibited from collaborating with China ever since Congress banned the agency from doing so in 2011. I did not know that. NASA cannot work with China on, interesting. Nobody can truly own the moon. I'll give it time.
Yeah.
but international outer space law, which is just made to be broken, is a wide open field that will probably change drastically as the US, China, and others set up permanent bases on the moon. The moon is seen as a strategic objective for space exploration, as it could become a pit stop for rockets on their way to Mars. In 2021, China officially announced its plans to build the International Lunar Research Station in cooperation with Russia. This aims to be fully autonomous at first, with robots carrying out such tasks as exploiting local resources. China's progress towards space has been stunning in recent years. Space Force Lieutenant. I forgot we have a Space Force.
Which sounds amazing. But before you carry on, Scrub, I think you might have a Streamlabs.
I don't have Streamlabs. If I have a Streamlabs, then somebody else is getting that money.
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. I misread understatement. Who's still no Streamlabs? My bad.
Oh yeah,
I thought he made a donation and.
No. Yeah, I appreciate that. No Streamlabs. I still have not yet been convinced, given the information that I have, that if I get a Streamlabs attached to my bank account, that anybody donating to me won't get a receipt that has my information on it. So, and
you can set it up with a business PayPal account, but that's a conversation for another day, obviously.
Yeah, Sinatra's been pushing me to that too, and I've got a whole. We spoke before the stream about philosophy. I've got a whole sort of philosophy on that stuff, and while I appreciate you guys, if we want to talk about that, I can talk about that later, but it's kind of irrelevant. Either way, short version, I do not currently have a Streamlabs. Understatement, appreciate it. Let's see. This includes landing a rover on the far side of the moon for the first time, getting rovers, landers, and orbiters to Mars, and building its own space station in Earth's orbit. Quote, I think it's entirely possible they could catch up and surpass us. Absolutely. Sure. I mean, on the one hand, I'm happy that humans, regardless of national placement, are advancing space exploration. That should, in my opinion, that should have been going on persistently since the 60s, but we all kind of lost the interest or whatever. Going to the moon became routine, they thought at the time, because it's like, oh, well, we've seen the show before on TV, so it's not that big a deal. Yeah, we should have been on the moon a long time ago.
Human nature is the thing that I am most skeptical of here, to be honest with you.
Oh, yeah, with the treaties and that, yeah.
Yeah.
What is the, I don't even know, off the top of your head, do you know what the British Space what's the British Space Agency called? And
oh, God.
What have they done, do you know?
I think we sent a woman to space. Just please bear with me. British Space. Oh, it's just called the UK Space Agency.
Okay.
Oh, there it is, ukspaceragency.gov.
UXA.
Let me just have a quick look. We have a Jupiter icy moon explorer currently.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for the like. There's so much promise. There was a way back in the olden days, and some of you in chat may remember this. I don't know. Way back in the olden days, when the Sci-Fi Channel was called Sci-Fi Channel and not Sci-Fi, they had briefly they had this weird little sort of art project. I don't know what you call it. They'd have these cut-ins of news reports from the future, and they were talking about the exploration mission to, I think it was Io, which is one of Jupiter's moons, and how there was some theory that because it was, if I get, it was either Io or Europa. You guys correct me. I think it might have been Io. Anyway, that under one of these moons, under a thick layer of ice, was actually liquid water with volcanic activity, and that possibly there could be life under the.
I believe it was Io, was it not?
Yeah, I think it was Io.
Yeah.
And so they had these fake news reports with this. I keep remembering some lady with purple hair, like they staged it like it was from the future, and they talked about, you know, the probes have landed on Io and they're starting to make their drilling, and then we have footage from Io, and it was this whole sort of like gimmick on the Sci-Fi Channel. And I remember thinking back then, it's like, why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we doing that by now? Is that what I have to look forward to? Because I'm really curious about this stuff. And I was always kind of miffed that there was always science fiction, the things that seemed like we should be able to do now. The advancements we made in space travel technology and everything between 1955 and 1965 were, you know, leaps and bounds beyond anything. We just decided to do it. You know, JFK made a declaration that by the end of the decade we'll land a man on the moon, and it's like, okay, we have our marching orders, guys, we got to do this.
Yeah.
And, you know, just inspiration and determination, and also competition. Don't get me wrong. Having the USSR in a space race definitely pushed us to do things beyond what we would have otherwise without that kind of incentive. But it just proved to me, just looking back into history, that if we put our minds to it, we could do great things again. We just don't seem to want to, or we don't have like a unified, either as a society or maybe that sense of determination or governments fighting against each other, or national pride maybe, to do great things like that anymore. So that's why it's encouraging in a way, like I said, on a human being basis, to see China doing all this crazy stuff. But then I'm thinking there's no reason why we couldn't have already been doing this.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, obviously, it's a funding thing. I mean, that would have gone up and down hundreds of times during that period, right?
Sure.
And
really, always comes down to that: appropriations and politicians arguing over budgets and things.
Yeah, and of course the argument for quote unquote supremacy. Again, human nature rears its ugly head. I'm a firm believer that we have that many countries, separate governments, and just that level of fierce, angry competition between our nations, that we will never do anything truly great until we are fully united. And don't get me wrong, I'm not a proponent of a one world government. I despise the idea of that, but I don't think that we'll achieve anything without that exact kind of thing.
Let's see. U.S. is on its own path to bring back boots on the moon in the coming years. For example, NASA recently had success with its first mission to the moon, Artemis 1, that brought its SLS mega rocket around the moon and back. The agency wants to build its own station orbiting the moon, as well as an Artemis lunar base. Yep. So there's your first article about China planning to make moon bricks. But
which
now
I'm very unsure of.
Yeah. Well, there's a counter article to China's advancements that I found that I wanted to at least a chance to for rebuttal. And this is from something called the National Interest. I don't know. I've never heard of this blog before, but I found it the other day. It says China's moon-based bluster is just that. Despite this posturing and increased cooperation with Russia, China is light years away from a moon base.
Oh.
A Chinese moon base sounds like the punchline of a bad conspiracy theory, but Yang Mengfei, a member of the China Aerospace and Technology Corporation, sees it as an ambitious goal within reach of the People's Republic of China. Despite this posturing, China is light years away from a moon base. All right, present me your argument. Late last month, Mengfei called on China to seize the opportunity to build critical space infrastructure on the moon that would lay the groundwork for the economy of the future. Yet the latest announcement about a Chinese-Russian lunar base is just another piece of propaganda. U.S. policymakers should not have serious concerns about a Chinese lunar base. Okay, well, tell us why. Certainly, China's advancement in space exploration in the 21st century are not to be ignored. China's Chang'e 4 lunar explorer became the first space probe to land on the far side of the moon in 2013. Furthermore, in recent years, China has conducted high-resolution imaging of the Earth's surface and constructed the Beidou Navigation Satellite System, or BDS, which provides China with economic and security data that informs its industrial development. The Chinese government has also proposed its own lunar research station in partnership with Russia to counter the United States Artemis program, which seeks to return U.S. astronauts to the moon. Okay, you're not disillusioning me against China's possibilities here. Mengfei and the Chinese Communist Party obviously want to tout these accomplishments to increase China's prestige on the international stage. However, China's space technology is still light years behind the United States in terms of reusability and cost efficiency. China's main rocket used for heavy payloads, the Long March 9, that sounds depressing, is having to be completely redesigned in order to make it a reusable rocket on par with SpaceX's Falcon 9 and other privately owned reusable rockets in the United States. This redesign could delay the Long March 9's utilization for a decade or more. Previous launch failures like that of the Long March 5 in 2018 have also delayed Chinese space missions by a number of years. China's ability to calibrate its own rockets will take time, but it is in the diplomatic sphere that the CCP's moon base ambitions may face their biggest challenge. Well, at least on the surface, China's doing stuff and doing stuff that we're not. And so if it is just for prestige, that's fine. But with each mission, with each project, they're learning more and they're gaining ground in knowledge and experience that, we don't have right now. So
my only argument that kind of maybe perhaps coincides with this article is that when I was serving in the Navy, I had access to the CIA World Fact Book, which is UK, US secret only. And I remember reading about China's technology. They haven't got shit on America when it comes to technological advancement. And of course, that does tend to coincide with military technology. So, I mean, that was the only argument that I could think of in regards to that. That said, it has been over 10 years since I served. So, advancements in technology can happen rapidly during that time. So,
yeah, what little I understand, and again, I know just about enough to be dangerous here, and anybody in chat who knows more, by all means, either correct me in chat or more likely in a comment later, is that China's really good at copying other technology, but they're not very good at innovating or developing their own or new stuff. So iterating on what exists, they're pretty good at. Advancing beyond what exists is still not quite in their wheelhouse. But of course, if you can iterate on what other people are doing and you can put it together in ways that haven't been used before towards something new. But let's see. The war in Ukraine has exposed Russia's space programs to the budgetary chopping block, making any potential assistance from Russia to China's space program negligible at best. And that's interesting. Currently, these cuts stand at $557 million, which sounds like a pittance given what we're spending just to prop up Ukraine ourselves right now in the U.S., with funding for scientific research and development cut completely. Okay, well, if it cut completely, that means that they've set back their space program like by a decade already. With every year that goes by that they're not investing in it, yeah, they're Russia, you dummies. This comes on the heels of Russia announcing it would quit the International Space Station in 2024, thereby sacrificing a key source of revenue and forsaking the massive amount of leverage it possessed over the United States and other Western space programs. Russia previously used the Baikonur Cosmodrome. I gotta say, some Russian names for things sound really cool. The Cosmodrome.
Yeah.
To launch other nations' satellites and payloads into space in exchange for payments by the United States and several other Western nations, but has refused to do so over the war in Ukraine, depriving the government of millions more in revenue. Those countries are now turning to the United States or the private sector to launch their products into orbit. Russia has spurned countries that have sanctioned the Kremlin in favor of countries on friendlier terms with Moscow, but this has also resulted in a substantial loss of revenue that severely hampered the Kremlin's space program. Yeah, I didn't really think about the interconnectedness of China and Russia in this, and Russia's basically more and more economically and otherwise isolating themselves from the rest of the world. And so if China was relying on Russia for support or help towards this endeavor, yeah, I guess that would probably throw a wrench into things. Let's see. China's decision to partner with a diplomatically isolated ally, I just said it, that now lacks any major cutting-edge space technology or financial investment in spacefaring can only hobble China's own ambitions. While both China and Russia recognize the massive potential for moon resources like minerals and solar power generation, Russia can only tepidly support Chinese alternatives to the U.S.-led space policy. This is me not knowing much about energy transmission or anything, but if I put a whole bunch of solar panels on the moon, how do I get that energy back to Earth? Is it just like, do I just fill up batteries and like ship them with rockets back and forth or something? I don't know.
I would assume that would be the only way, right? Surely.
I guess. I mean, you could obviously power your stuff on the moon without having to ship energy there. That would also be useful. But then the other thing too is that solar panels are notoriously fragile. And when you have like a moon environment and you have like micrometeors and dust and everything else, I'm wondering how effective those would be over time, or what kind of maintenance you'd have to do to keep that going.
Just a series of extensions. Just
extension cords. The space power strip.
Yeah, yeah. You got
We
you
do,
got,
we
you got
just
to make
like
sure that they have power surge protection on them as well.
yes, yeah. We just yeah we have a new manufacturing race where everybody's making power strips that we just like link together in a chain all
Yeah,
the way
yeah,
from Earth to the moon, and then we're like, hey, we can power a light bulb down here.
yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, China's successful strides to join the ranks of spacefaring nations is something that the Communist Party rightly touts in the diplomatic sphere. Yet the notion that China is serious about putting together an Earth-Moon system that will generate billions of dollars and solidify Chinese control of the moon is pure fantasy. While Yang Mengfei's recent success as chief designer and chief commander of China's 2020 Chang'e 5 lunar sampling mission allows him to promote China's breakneck pace in matching U.S. capabilities in space, mega projects such as the Chinese moon settlement exist only in Beijing's imagination. All right, so there you go. You got two competing ideas. We're going to have robots building moon brick Adobe bases on the moon for us within 5 years. And then, no, they can't do anything because they don't have the backing or the economy to do so.
Well, I mean, I don't like the idea of China beating America in this, but also the idea that this wouldn't happen and is simply just mere propaganda is also rather saddening at the same time. 'Cause it sounds quite exciting to me.
Well, it also shows that, I mean, it just shows how complicated this stuff is. It's not easy. It was never easy. It's a very complicated project. That's why you need that kind of societal, governmental, economic unity to push for something like this to happen, because it's not going to be undertaken by some private company run by Elon Musk or the Virgin Atlantic guy. It's space travel is not easy. My grandfather, to some extent that I am still unaware because it's still classified, my grandfather worked for NASA, and he worked on the Apollo 11 mission to the moon. And
that's awesome.
He was friends with some of the Mercury 7 astronauts and everything else. And what little I was able to get from him when he was alive about the whole thing, it is the most dangerous endeavor for any human being to attempt to space travel, and not just because out in space. It's just that the speed and the unknowns of testing new technology. The first real deaths in the space race happened on Earth. Gus Grissom and a couple of other astronauts whose names I suddenly forget were testing out on a landing pad in the United States. We're testing out the capsule that was going to take them to the moon, and they're sitting there on concrete on Earth. They're sitting in a capsule that's full of oxygen, right? Full of pumped in oxygen. And there was a spark somewhere in the computers, and the entire thing lit up, and they got incinerated. And it wasn't until after these guys died that they looked at the design of everything and said, well, golly, if you fill up a capsule with pure oxygen and you also insulate that capsule with flammable materials, you've just created a bonfire. And as they say in philosophy and otherwise, speed kills. They were so determined to get this thing going and everything else that they sort of set their reasoning aside. And it really takes focus. It really takes dedication, but it's also always, always dangerous. And so to say, oh yeah, we're going to have robots on the moon in 5 years building Adobe brick houses for us to live on within 30 years. No, not. I mean, if it sounds too easy to be true when it comes to space travel or interplanetary settlements or something, it is too good to be true.
Resolute Germ brings up a good point about how Russians are the tech guys, and they absolutely are the tech guys. They were absolutely ahead of everyone for quite some time. Especially back in the 80s, 90s, and early noughties. They were the ones who invented hypersonic technology. They invented a nuclear missile that it was gigantic, this thing, Scribe. It was called ASX-21. It was a missile that was so big it could be split. It had to split into two.
Ooh, okay.
it would basically go for 2 targets, and it would travel at 8 times the speed of sound. But the delivery system using there's only one aircraft in the world that can carry it, and that's a Bear. And Bear's a very slow, reconnaissance type aircraft. Well, it's reconnaissance / bomber aircraft. It just wasn't realistic, so they kind of ended up pretty much cannibalizing the technology and just kind of going off with other stuff. But they were the ones who invented anti-ship missiles that can zigzag in the air. They can travel at Mach 4, things like that. So it kind of makes sense that China would ally themselves with Russians on this. That said, I honestly don't know. I don't know how viable getting robots onto the moon is and getting them building things.
And besides that, is just like I said in the article, because of the Ukraine war, Russia has completely spiked its technological advancement, and especially in space race, spacefaring type stuff. So every day that goes by that they're not working on that or innovating on that, they're falling behind to the United States, to India, to Japan, other countries that deal with spacefaring stuff.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure the Russians stopped innovating quite some time ago.
Their economy has been just garbage for quite a while, especially say anything that's non-essential has pretty much gone by the wayside anyway. So they probably weren't doing much to begin with, but renting out space so other countries could launch their satellites and things. Even that is going sideways now, and so now the U.S. is going to get that business, and other countries are going to get that business. So. But speaking of innovating and technology in regards to moon base, article number 3, which might be interesting. Rolls-Royce gets funding to develop miniature nuclear reactor for a moon base.
Interesting.
Yeah, so the company hopes to have a demonstration model for a modular micro reactor ready to delivery to the moon by 2029.
Hey, it's the UK Space Agency as well.
There you go. You see? I tried to cover the gamut here. The UK Space Agency has decided to continue funding a project by Rolls-Royce to create a small nuclear-powered reactor that could serve as a long-term energy source for lunar bases. Well, why not solar? What happened to solar? The new boost to Rolls-Royce's research pot follows a previous $303,495 or 249,000 pounds study funded by the UK Space Agency in 2022. With the new funds, the company hopes to have a demonstration model for modular microreactor ready to deliver to the moon by 2029. Granted that there's anybody on the moon to receive it. In a March 17th press release, Rolls-Royce and the UK Space Agency state that the microreactor program will help to, quote, develop technology that will provide power needed for humans to live and work on the moon. Now, this is the kind of thing that I like, because there was so much that was developed in the race to the moon back in the 60s that the technology that was created in order to solve those problems eventually, trickled down into the consumer market and to the public market as well. So when they're like, okay, we're going to push for development for this very specific thing that's going to help with space race stuff, if they actually improve on nuclear reactor technology in the process, that would actually help the rest of the world, fingers crossed, that would also be good too.
Yeah. It's a mutually benefit humanity.
If you had like micro reactors helping to power cities, or something. We really this is probably, and this was just brought up yesterday. Those of you who've watched the Living on Borrowed Crime streams or otherwise, or seen my other,
which is a great name.
I know. I looked around first. I tried to make sure there wasn't anybody else that was using that for a podcast name or something. But so far as I can tell, no one has. So fingers crossed, I lucked out. But our friend In Human Form on YouTube asked me out of the blue the other day, said, have you done a TEDx on nuclear power or pro-nuclear power? And I said something to the effect of, no, but I think it would be kind of boring, because I'm, at least in sentiment, in favor of expanding nuclear power. But I think most people, most people relate, most of the fear comes from Chernobyl, which, as far as I understand it, nuclear power technology that has advanced since Chernobyl makes another Chernobyl practically impossible. And then other people say Fukushima, and I'm like, well, Fukushima didn't actually melt down. and people are still living there. There's not like a 30-mile exclusion zone or something. It had its problems, but of course it was hit by a tsunami. Admittedly, a tsunami that people had predicted would be a threat in the future, and the people running the plant didn't heed those warnings, so it could have been avoided completely. But yeah, nuclear power. And just yesterday or the day before, Germany shut down, or is in the process of shutting down, its last nuclear reactors because they're so green, they're so climate change something. And I'm like, so you're just going to be dependent on oil from Russia more now?
Yeah.
Like, okay, good job, guys.
I'll never understand the skepticism around nuclear power. You know, we've again, Chernobyl happened. We have improved things considerably since.
Yeah, and you now, am I mistaken? Did you work on a nuclear submarine?
No, but I have been around one. And yeah, we used it on submarines. So
Sure.
why can we not use them to I mean, America uses nuclear power to power the gigantic bloody aircraft carriers. So it's kind of silly to not kind of go down the nuclear route. And just to say, Scribe, seeing like the UK being involved in this, having any involvement in this is very, like, I find that such like a very positive thing. You just don't hear British people talking about this kind of thing. You don't see it in our news either, really. I mean, I haven't personally.
You know, when it comes to things like this, when it comes to like scientific advancement, when it comes to things that are, you know, when I find out that my country's doing something that is an all-around positive, right? Improving energy technology, trying to expand our place in the universe or advance space travel, things that ultimately are going to benefit everybody in some way, shape, or form. Sure, they're going to lead to more competitions and conflicts and things, but at least we're moving beyond our current place in the world, literally or figuratively.
Yeah.
When I see that my country is doing that, I cannot help but feel a certain amount of pride in my country and in humankind in general, that we're actually like focusing our attention, at least briefly, on something beyond terra firma. Which I've always that's sort of like I grew up in that kind of mindset, looking to the future. When am I going to get my flying car? Where's my moon base? Why isn't everybody riding around in monorails and operating with, you know, solar panels on their baseball caps or something? All this stuff that should put us beyond where we're at, and yet every day we're just like so mired in politics and the latest social thing, and then there was a commercial that had a person in it that it's like, ay caramba, why don't we just do
I know what
something
you're saying,
a bit more grand,
Are we
occasionally?
In the information age is probably what they would call it, right?
Yes.
I would like to see us grow beyond, like grow further in an age in my lifetime to do the things that you're talking about.
Yeah, the information age has effectively caused us all to be informing ourselves about our navels. We're looking completely down. We're not putting our vision out where we should, I think, or should do so more. Anyway, let's see. Let me get back to the continuing research will focus on 3 critical aspects of the microreactor: generating heat, transferring that heat, and converting that heat into usable energy. Quote, this innovative research by Rolls-Royce could lay the groundwork for powering continuous human presence on the moon, said Paul Bate, chief executive of the UK Space Agency, said in a press release. There is also the matter of outfitting a microreactor to operate in the lunar environment. Currently, a majority of space travel is powered by solar energy. A nuclear power source allows for more versatility in missions and less reliance on the sun. Yeah, because you wouldn't have to like wait to get out of the way of like the Earth or the moon or something to get the sun on you. You just have an engine.
Yeah,
that you could keep moving. To help Rolls-Royce scientists and engineers, the company has partnered with the University of Oxford, University of Bangor, University of Brighton, the University of Sheffield's Advanced Manufacturing Research Center, and Nuclear AMRC. Quote, partnerships like this between British industry, the UK Space Agency, and government are helping to create jobs across our £16 billion space tech sector and help ensure that the UK continues to be a major force in frontier science. George Freeman, Minister of State at the Department of Science, Innovation, and Technology, said in the March 17th press release. £16 billion space tech sector as compared to the $557 million Russia had set aside for its spacefaring before they cut it off because of the war. That's I think somebody's got a bigger financial foothold on the whole thing than the other one.
It's great to see the UK getting so heavily involved. But yeah, I never hear British politicians talking about this kind of thing ever.
It's probably not very sexy. Yeah, it's probably not very sexy. Yeah.
To me, it's sexy. It's better. I would prefer to listen to this, instead of hearing about, hate crime legislation. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is positive. This is great. We're taking part in something that is far greater than ourselves. Like,
yeah, we always hear about these days. We talk about subjects like how do we solve the climate crisis, getting girls into STEM, who will be the next technological leaders. Do we ever hear our major politicians coming on TV and saying, I want to tell you what our country is doing to advance science and how you can help?
Yeah.
Something like that. I mean, some just like, I know it sounds cheesy and I know it sounds like a public service announcement kind of thing, but really, if you want to get people interested and excited and feel like, at least in spirit, if not by direct hands, we're working as a team towards something that's going to better our country and or our civilization, you got to just do it and say it and really set a goal and hold people to it on that kind of thing. So I was, it was laughable at the time, but I was at least glad. And I know, some people out there might find that complimenting Donald Trump, but I mean, I know the Space Force thing sounds kind of goofy, but, ultimately having those considerations, given what we're talking about here with conflicts over moon territory, at least it was a little bit more forward thinking, getting people thinking again about our place, not only in the local universe as it is, but also trying to advance the idea that we really need to start focusing again on being a technological and future forward nation if we're really going to get anywhere, literally or figuratively, as well as just be competitive in the world generally. The science and technology will always be the end-all dividing factor between the successive nations.
Absolutely.
Because either we're going to be the ones that people are buying from, or we're going to have to be the ones buying from others when it comes to what we need to make the world and our lives work. Just talk about like microprocessors. Like part of the reason that China wants Taiwan back so quick is because Taiwan's really good at making microprocessors and China's not that great at it. And the supplies to make those things and the talent and the knowledge necessary to make those things. Yeah, so they got to constantly import that technology rather than creating it themselves. That's the kind of dynamic. Same thing with the energy crisis because of Russia. If you can't generate your own power, you're going to be dependent on somebody else. And if they decide to turn off the spigot, where are you left?
Yeah.
Yeah. So energy independence, technology independence, or technology forward thinking, these need to be priorities. And the fact that we don't have some very plain and bold initiatives, announcements, or drives by our governments to really focus on this stuff more than the kind of piddly temporary social stuff or political controversies. Anyway, just want to say I'm a little depressed about it. Just a little, just most of my life. Yeah, most of my life. It's right now, but most of my life.
I mean, I've not been coming from the same position as you. You having a family member literally work for NASA, but like I log on to Twitter every day, and what do I see? I see politicians, and what are they talking about? They're fighting with people, like literally fighting with people, and they're repeating the same exact social talking points that they always are. You need to vote Republican, you need to vote conservative, you need to vote liberal, you need to vote this, that, and it's like no. You constantly sit on your Twitters and your platforms complaining about the same old things that you've always complained about. The G20s are getting together to talk about climate change. We need to do more about climate change, recycling. Well, is surely the solutions to these problems are through massive scientific investment and just advancement. You don't see that, do you? Instead, you get a really angry teenage girl from Sweden, or saying, "How dare you?" And being, that's not how we move forward.
I wish I know I'm being too idealistic here. I wish the divisions of who you're going to vote for was based more on the passion and or legitimacy of someone's ideas for solving problems, rather than just I'm this party and that's my philosophy. You know, if the political and party affiliation became effectively irrelevant next to, okay, there is a problem that needs to be solved. What is your solution? What do you intend to do about it, specifically? And then, you know, I wish we were having more of an argument of ideas and credibility and debate over actual, like, trying to solve things, rather than just saying, you know, my Republican colleague said this, that, and the other, and my conservative values are this, that, and the, like, I know. I'm getting off track a little bit here, but it's always frustrating to see us sort of gridlocked in this quagmire of political divisiveness, rather than thinking as a society, what problems do we want to solve, and who's got the better sales pitch, at least at the beginning, of how we might solve it. Yeah. And that gets set by the wayside, because we don't really want to solve problems. Because as long as there's a problem, you can continue to leverage that as a reason to vote for me, so I can eventually not solve it. As an example, you see things sometimes where, and this is just the most recent thing that I saw. It was something from the Democrats in America that said, if you vote for Biden in 2024, we will ban assault weapons or something like that. And in my mind, I'm thinking, wait, okay. The Democrat, again, this is just one example. You can find several things with Republicans as well, but this is just the most fresh in my mind. The Democrats had the White House, House of Representatives, and the Senate under Obama, and they didn't ban assault weapons. They had the White House, the House of Representatives, and the Senate under Biden in his first appearance, and they didn't ban assault weapons. When you have the opportunity to do the things you say you want to do, it seems like you never get them done. So what's to make anybody think you're going to do that if you actually get everything you wanted again down the line? But that's what, as long as you've got a problem.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
But it's sort of like having the lemonade stand at one end of the street, and just a few blocks away you have the saltine cracker stand. So by the time that they've had their saltine crackers, they're thirsty and they want the lemonade, and you get money from both sides. And as long as you keep the saltines out there, the problem's always there. You always have a temporary solution, but you never really solve the problem. But you keep making the money. And it's just like, Anyway, off base, moon base. Let's get back to moon base. And this is the last article. This is more of an overview, at least promised by the title, from the BBC, of all places.
Oh, no.
The epic quest to build a permanent moon base. Let's talk about all the complications and all the things. We'll see if my voice lasts all of this. The handful of astronauts who have set foot on the moon spent as little as a day on the surface. How do you build a settlement that will last for years? If my 1980s era Ooze-born book of the future was to be believed, and frankly, it served as my Bible when I was growing up. You see, this person's cut from the same cloth as me, I think. At the beginning of the 21st century, along with flat screen TVs, electric cars, and telephones that, quote, have pictures as well as sound, there would be astronauts living and working in a city on the moon. Occupying vast domes connected by pressurized underground passageways, Moonies would work. I like Lunarians personally. I like Lunarians.
I like
would work at consoles surrounded by banks of computers, or bounce across the surface of moon in moon jeeps on their way to the moon mines. Since the last astronaut left his final footstep in 1972, however, the only evidence that people once occupied the moon consists of little more than a few flags, 3 rovers, a dozen cameras, and 96 bags of human waste. Yes. Whatever.
That, but
well, it's got to go somewhere. That's something else we're going to have to consider when it comes to living on the moon. Where does all the garbage go?
Oh, yeah.
Whatever happened to the moon base we were promised? That's what I've been asking since I was like 7 years old. Quote, one of the big goals of what we're doing today is to make sure that this isn't flags and footprints and then it gets canceled again, says NASA's strategy and architecture lead for exploration, systems development, mission directorate, architecture development office. Good Lord. Let me try that again. NASA's strategy and architecture lead for the Exploration Systems Development Mission Directorate Architecture Development Office, Nujod Moranci. Probably mispronouncing that. In non-NASA speak, that means Moranci is one of the key people responsible for planning the agency's return to the moon. Quote, "We want to lay the groundwork so that this can be an inevitable process that goes forward," she says. Oh, and we don't spend 50 years not exploring beyond low Earth orbit again like we have for the last 50 years. Well, that would be nice. Could you do it, please? In human form, NASA is fake. Okay, where are you going to do a video on the moon landing? Going to be on the moon landing? You can tell us all how it was Stanley Kubrick in a soundstage out in like Oakland, California or something. NASA is fake. Well, I'll tell you what, NASA, the promise of NASA as in the momentum that we had in the 60s and just slightly forward of that, yeah, that ended up being a big disappointment. But admittedly, it's not because they didn't want to do more. It's because their budgets constantly got hamstrung by politicians and bickering. You really have to spend the money to get the result. And we've been so reticent as a country over the last 30 years and more to actually put our money where our dreams are and get to where we want to go, because nobody wants to spend the money. I mean, we'll burn tons and piles of cash over nonsense, right? Gold hammers and things like that, as they used to say in the 80s. But actually trying to advance our civilization and our technology in the space, no. NASA is fake. My grandfather worked for NASA. It's not fake. I got a whole bunch of stuff from NASA that he gifted to me over the years. It's not fake. Shush you. Unless you do your moon landing video covering the moon landing conspiracy theory. Tell you what, you like doing I hear you like doing documentaries. All joking aside, sort of.
Me?
Thank you. Oh, you?
Oh, I have made a few.
Not
on things, not on such as subjects such as that, but yeah.
Well, I should introduce you to sometime. You might have stuff to talk about. You in Inhuman form. For me, as I call him. Let's see. Okay. And so far, that plan is working out. Is it, though? NASA's first uncrewed Artemis mission returned to Earth in December 2022 after almost 4 weeks in space. Traveling far beyond the moon, it proved the capabilities of the Orion capsule, its European Space Agency service module, and the giant SLS rocket that blasted it on its way. Artemis 2 is due to carry the first astronauts to lunar orbit in 2024, and sometime in the middle of the decade during Artemis 3, 2 astronauts will land near the lunar South Pole. At least one of them will be a woman.
I mean, it's not really important,
who cares?
But okay.
It isn't, but whatever. you want to give your first lunar Adam and Eve, at least one of them? Okay. The crew, So the next mission will just be orbiting the moon, not actually landing on it. Artemis 2 will be landing. And then, the crew of the final Apollo mission, Gene Cernan and Harrison Schmitt, spent the longest on the lunar surface of any astronaut so far, 75 hours in total. Cernan likened it to a camping expedition. They ate and slept in hammocks inside the compact lander and put on their spacesuits to head outside. In comparison, the astronauts of Artemis 3 are scheduled to stay on the moon for around a week and can expect a few more home comforts and a lot more space. Womp womp. The lander they will use is being provided by Elon Musk's SpaceX and is based on his Starship concept, which was originally conceived to carry 100 people to Mars. Yeah, that ain't happening.
No, it's not. No.
Given that NASA only wants to convey 2 people to the moon, there should be plenty of room for a laboratory, storage for a rover, and even a few home comforts like beds, a kitchen, and toilet. Quote, I don't know that we can discuss a lot of details at this point, Moranci says, but yes, SpaceX's proposed solution exceeds our government's requirements, so there are other discussions going on for how you could use that margin for other purposes, but there's no agreements in place today. The only reason I sort of hesitate when I heard it was Elon Musk, SpaceX doing this is that a lot of Elon Musk's promises about SpaceX's abilities and potential have not come to fruition, and on examination probably could never come to fruition.
The man is he's a salesman, effectively, isn't he?
Oh, yeah, that's it. Yeah, he's a salesman. And if you've ever watched, there was actually a TED Talk, if you can believe it, where it wasn't Elon Musk, but it was someone in charge of his reusable rocket SpaceX program. And she was being interviewed by a guy. And she was saying how, oh, yeah, we're going to have rockets taking people around. This was just for like Earth travel. Okay. They were going to have reusable low orbit spaceships shuttling people literally across the globe and do it in a cycle and a rotation that was similar to your regular jetliners. And she was talking about this and how it was going to work, and like, oh yeah, you're gonna take the ferry ride off to the launch pad in the middle of the harbor in New York or whatever, and then you get on this rocket, you'd be shot up, and you take you to Paris in like 30 minutes or something, and then it'll be back in New York within an hour. And the guy interviewing her at multiple stages in this interview was completely incredulous. It was just like, but that can't really work, can it? Like, no, it'll work. And you just think like, okay, well, reusing the shuttle, the time for fueling it alone, the amount of money it costs to fuel that rocket. And she was talking about prices for tickets, like, a couple $100s. And like, so you're going to take 100 people onto a shuttle at $100 a pop or $200 a pop. And that's going to cover all the logistics, all the fueling, everything else. You're going to make this economically viable. And you're going to be able to have a turnaround time that is physically and possibly thermodynamically impossible, even for the most advanced space programs we have on Earth right now. Oh no, it'll be fine. It's that kind of thing that makes me kind of go, real quick. Thank you, Chicago Mike. Capricorn 1 was a documentary. Yes, Capricorn 1, the fake landing on Mars. God, who was in it? Was that it was Elliot Gould, I think, was the reporter in that one, right? Played the reporter. Was Lee Majors in that? I'm trying to remember who the stars were. It was oh God, no, it's right in my mind. I can see him. He's got such eyebrows. The actor started with a B. Dang it. Somebody's going to correct me real quick, but yeah, I'm just thinking I haven't watched that movie in 20 years. Do you know about Capricorn 1?
No, I don't know.
So Capricorn 1 was a sort of, it was a 70s conspiracy theory movie where the U.S. was landing on Mars, except the entire thing was faked. And then in order to maintain the, sorry, spoiler alert for those of you who haven't seen this movie from, 30 years ago, 40 years ago now. In order to maintain the legitimacy of this, they were going to then take these astronauts, they put them on the soundstage, they film them. The astronauts were like, really, we're doing this? And then in order to ensure that nobody thought it was fake, they were going to stage a catastrophe upon return, but they were going to kill the astronauts in real life on Earth in order to cover up everything. And then there was this whole like chase me, catch me with the government to get away from their murder squads or whatever. I think in Chicago, Mike, O.J. Simpson was it? That's right. O.J. Simpson. That's right. That's there was him, but like the lead astronaut guy was it Sam Waterston? Advocatus? Was it Sam? Really? Wow, I thought it was somebody else. Anyway, yeah, Elliot Gould was the reporter. Telly Savalas was in it? Really? Oh man, I haven't seen that movie in forever. But okay, yeah. So Capricorn 1. Yeah, it was all fake. But yeah, that's why when I read Elon Musk is involved in this, I have a little bit of a, is based on the Starship concept. Okay, so if it's just like a design thing, but NASA's having to make it happen, okay, I guess maybe sort of. But and I also get
NASA
a little
doesn't have the resources or the funding,
or have had the time over the years to design these things ahead of time. So. Yeah, I guess my question is, why farm out that part of the process to SpaceX? What do they have or know that NASA? I mean, it's entirely possible. They came up with something that NASA hasn't, or came up with some new design or something. That's my first real question mark about this.
Outsourcing, how American?
Well, no, I mean that's fine. That's fine, but I mean, it's not like they haven't been planning on or thinking about how to land on the moon with modern technology for a long time now. So what? again, what does SpaceX have that NASA didn't have available to them? Is what I'm.
Yeah.
Whatever the final specification for the Artemis 3 lander, during subsequent missions, astronauts are going to live on the moon for extended periods and explore further. This is likely to involve them using their spaceship as a base and traveling around in pressurized lunar rovers, mobile habitats trundling across the surface. Trundling. I love that word. It's a good word. Quote, to get the range on the moon, you need mobility systems. The crew can't go very far on foot, says Moranci. Quote, the science we want to do is in a lot of locations around the moon. The goal is to build systems that would be capable of month-long or better excursions. But the longer you stay, the riskier it gets. Quote, you're dealing with three major challenges: radiation, temperature extremes, and meteorite impacts, says Aidan Cowley, scientific advisor at ESA's European Astronaut Center, in Cologne, Germany. On Earth, we are protected from the worst of these effects by a thick atmosphere and the magnetic bubble surrounding the planet, known as the magnetosphere. Quote, on the moon, you're exposed to solar radiation and cosmic rays, which obviously grants everybody superpowers, as we know.
Yeah.
As the Fantastic Four has taught us. So there's a cost benefit analysis there, you know. Cosmic rays at a much more dangerous dose level and temperatures can range from 100 degrees Celsius or 212 degrees Fahrenheit in the correct measurements of things in the day to minus 180 degrees Celsius or minus 292 degrees Fahrenheit at night, Cowley says. So it's kind of like a day-night cycle in Arizona. All right.
You know, we use both of those, Celsius and Fahrenheit here.
Because you just can't let go of the best one.
Well, Celsius being the preferable one, obviously, just makes far more sense. But yeah, please continue. Yeah.
In your universe, is Berenstain Bears spelled with an A or an E?
I don't know.
Okay. Quote, then all you need to do is look at the moon and you see its craters. It's being constantly pelted by micrometeorite impacts, and this essentially ablates and damages anything on the surface over time, which is why, like I was saying earlier, the idea of solar panels or solar energy being collected on the moon has got to be a very limited time base per unit because of just the amount of damage you're going to inevitably take to those solar panels because of micrometeorites and everything else. Rather than bringing bulky and expensive habitats from Earth, Cowley favors living off the land. Well, Chinese are thinking about bricks. Quote, if you look at the history of our civilization, every time we move to a new location, a new continent, we look around to find what resources are there and we use them to sustain ourselves. This is how we proliferated across the planet. And while the moon's natural resources are not immediately obvious, it doesn't have any vegetation, food, or running water. It does have some mineral resources, sunlight, and water ice. I guess you can have other kinds of ice. You could have helium ice or something at right temperatures. Quote, if you really want to do it for the long term, well, don't we all? Cialis for men. Oh, sorry. We need to make the most of every resource that we bring or extract, says Rachel Klima from Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab near Washington, D.C. Director of the Lunar Surface Innovation Consortium, LSI. Whenever I see like really lots of fancy words together, I wonder if they try to make a very clever an acronym out of it.
Yeah.
In this case, no, but you never know.
No.
Klima's group brings together space agencies, academics, and industry to plot the future of lunar exploration. Why are you guys not doing more to advertise this to the population? Why am I only finding out about this in some random article I decided to pick out? This should be something that it's so frustrating.
Internet is SEO scribe. That's not what people are looking for, unfortunately.
No, I'm just talking about like our public officials. I'm just talking about like, I mean, I know it's antiquated and it's cheesy, but I just think back to that speech for JFK where he's announcing to the country and the world that, you know, we mean to put the man on the moon and return him to Earth, not in, within our lifetime, within the decade. I can't quote it exactly, but you know what I mean. He
Maybe
put a time limit on it.
Back then, scribe, to do such things.
I don't know.
Post World War II, you know. Yeah,
it's just bold statements of intent for overall benefit and advancement. Just something like that. I don't know, something epic. We don't get that kind of epic thing anymore. I don't know.
I know.
Let's see. Quote, if you have waste heat, use the heat for something. If you have waste metal, then when you're trying to create oxygen, use the metal. If you have waste scrap metal, use the scrap metal, says Klima. You don't want to trash things up. Well, no. Yes, you have to MacGyver everything. All you've got is what you bring with you. Over the past decade, Cowley's team in Cologne has been taking that mantra to heart. They've become adept at turning one of the most abundant lunar resources, lunar dust or regolith, into bricks. How? Tell us how. I'm still wondering. I mean, the Chinese have a robot that's going to do it, but exactly how? Quote, I joke to people that I want to build a brick factory on the moon, he says. Well, the Chinese are working on it. And initially, everyone's like, that's crazy. But then they start thinking through the problems and solving them. Like, ESA has now developed several ways of making moon bricks, experimenting with dust that has similar properties to lunar regolith. One method, excellent, okay, is straight out of the Bond Villain's Handbook and involves a giant mirror and a series of magnifying lenses to focus sunlight. The heat from the light is used to melt together dust, which can be built up in layers, a 3D printer for moon dust. Wow. So it's all smoke and mirrors, you say?
Oh, for God's sake. I mean, literally, yeah.
I mean, that is interesting. I mean, you make a solar laser to 3D print using that. Okay, all right. ESA scientists and engineers have also made bricks by heating dust in a solar oven and bombarding regolith with microwaves. In fact, they're becoming very good at it. Quote, there's no huge showstoppers in our estimation, Cowley says. People have been building bricks for tens of thousands of years. The hard part is doing it on another world. Yeah. And that is the next step. One idea in the future could be an experimental extraterrestrial brick maker. Okay, so you need
awesome.
You need a kiln. Basically, you need a kiln to make bricks on the moon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If successful, then bricks could be used to build entire lunar structures, perhaps encasing inflatable modules or repurposing defunct landers. So, does this mean astronauts will one day need to acquire bricklaying skills? Quote, I love the idea of my astronaut colleagues laying bricks on the moon. That would be hilarious, Cowley admits. But I think it's probably going to be a small automatic system, perhaps using robots working together in a collaborative way, but maybe humans could be involved at some point, much like a foreman of a construction site. But even if they have robots to build their home, don't imagine astronauts are going to be living in luxury. Quote, it's going to be cozy, says Klima. I've seen some designs where you have the living quarters stacked in different ways or have areas that are multi-purpose. There is not going to be a whole lot of privacy. 8 years ago, ESA's former Director General, Jan Ruerner, first revealed his proposals for a village on the moon. Today, those plans do not seem quite as far-fetched. Contracts have already been signed between space agencies and industry for long-term lunar infrastructure missions, such as satellites to provide communications and navigation services for the moon, and plans are being devised for water extraction from lunar ice and electricity from solar panel plants.
I always thought that we just take prefabs with us. I didn't realize we could actually use moon materials to build a moon base. That's awesome. Yeah.
Well, I mean, one of the considerations for, space travel in general is a weight to fuel ratio. And so if you don't want to carry any more than you absolutely have to for the amount of fuel you're going to have to carry with you.
Of course, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you can go to a place and build with what's there, obviously that's a great advantage. For a lot of the Mars missions, the plan is, or was, I don't know, at this point, if they're talking about making, if they perfect brick making technology for the moon, conceivably they might be able to do something similar for Mars. But anyway, one of the old plans was you send a supply mission to Mars first without any people on it, just with the building materials and all the things that they'll need. And then later you send the people who will land and then make use of what's already been delivered there.
Which makes sense,
And so, but I mean, I wonder if they've done any experiments with Mars-like soil to see if they could do something similar. That would be interesting. Let's see. Where did I go? NASA's vision might not be the only one. There may be plans from other countries with their own lunar ambitions, such as China, or private ventures aiming to make money from the moon. NASA's Moranci is careful not to promise a moon village in the next 10 years, but she believes within the next decade, we will have at least the basic foundations for humans to live and work on the moon. Quote, I think we will have permanent infrastructure, repeatable missions that are occurring hopefully on an annual basis, and we should have a lot of capabilities to explore different regions, unquote. So, at the risk of repeating the optimism of the Oosborne Book of the Future, if you are reading this in 40 years' time, I confidently predict we will have a moon base. We should have already had one. Already should have had one.
I completely agree. But history being what it is, it's kind of not too surprising that we kind of don't. And I still remain skeptical, but hopeful at the same time.
Let's see. Thank you again, Chicago Mike. So as Moonbase goes, she's a brick house. Yes. Yes. Moon bricks. Moon bricks on the moon. That is apparently the most popular method right now. So we're going to have a moon kiln with moon bricks and moon glazing and all types of moon. We're going to have moon pots.
Moon pie?
Moon pie. There you go. Moon pies.
Yeah.
But that brings us to the end of my article selection. So any other thoughts on Moonbase or anything else that's on your mind there, Alex?
Well, I suppose not really being too knowledgeable in this field. I suppose it's more my extreme skepticism of humanity, to be honest, when it comes to this kind of thing. Will we achieve in the next 10 years? Yeah, I think so. Provided the funding and, the will is actually still there. I mean, it would appear that you were in a space race, not with the Russians, but with the Chinese. And hopefully, if what the Chinese is saying is guff, is a load of BS, maybe it's still enough to get the Americans enthused and get you guys up there. I don't know.
Yeah. It doesn't sound like the Chinese plan is necessarily out of sorts because NASA is talking about the same thing. The question is, in the absence of Russian funding and without the infrastructure and capabilities to innovate on their own without assistance from other countries, could China actually meet its declarations or desires? At this stage of the game, probably not. But then every day that goes by that either Russia's not either funding their own technology or assisting China in their endeavors is another day that they're falling behind. Granted that between the UK with their work on micro reactors, with NASA having, at least we have a plan. That's the one thing that I'm at least hopeful for, is the fact that Artemis 1, 2, and 3, Artemis 1's already gone through, Artemis 2 is about to go off. That we actually have a plan in place, that there's all the wheels are moving in that direction. My only complaint, I suppose, right now is that there's not, or at least I haven't seen it. Let's put it that way. I have not seen a more energetic and concerted effort to promote and get people excited about the Artemis project. For the sake of our own ambitions. That's the part that setting aside potential competition or conflict with China, just trying to get people interested and aware and excited about this would be great. And I haven't seen that. So maybe when we finally be able to put a face on the process, because only recently did they release a picture of the crew that is going to be on that Artemis 2 mission. And so now we have actual, we can turn it into a reality show. That's my best pitch.
That's a great idea, Scribe. I can't argue with that at all.
Put the lead up to Artemis 2, the process, the training, everything. Make it a reality show. Get branding from everybody and their brother, every social media site. Have this thing running 24/7 in some way, shape, or form, leading up to when we finally circle the moon again with people, actual humans looking at it.
Astronauts vlogging as well.
Yeah, they really should be leveraging this into something more. Now, of course, there's always, and this might be the slightly rain cloud over everything. As I said earlier, space travel is never safe. It is one of the most dangerous things you can do. So the danger always exists that you end up with another Challenger situation, right? Where you do a whole bunch of media press getting ready for, the first teacher in space and everything, and then you have an absolute disaster. And that's just the reality situation. That risk is always going to be there. So I could see why there'd be some hesitation to try to build something up like this just to have it go sideways. Not, hopefully not fingers crossed as all things, but just being realistic about it. But at the same time, if we don't revel in our advancements and the excitement of progress without also accepting the risks, either as a society or the people actually doing it, we never get anywhere. So if they're operating out of fear right now, or if they decide to sort of downplay everything on the risk that something might go wrong, I think that's a mistake. If something goes wrong, you try again,
Yeah, that's the correct attitude to have. And seriously, get the astronauts to vlog, get them starting now. And let them be honest about their feelings. Obviously, I know that there's things that they can't say, and they can only push that so far. But if you want to get people excited and people actually involved, feel like they're involved, get them vlogging, get them talking about this, get them talking about their fears and hopes and everything.
What they need to do is hire the guys that promoted Fire Festival. Because okay, because here's the thing: setting aside the end result, you cannot deny that marketing campaign was one of the most successful things at the time. Got everybody freaked.
Yeah,
and now the final product didn't deliver, but you can't deny the marketing. A couple things from chat. Roasted Opinions. Biggest problem with a moon base is actually the microgravity. Humans aren't meant to survive long term in such low gravity environments. Yeah, there's going to have to be rigorous physical discipline when it comes to exercise, diet. It's not, at least in the short term. You're right. It's not meant to be a long term thing. The science fiction of it has always been that you'd eventually have people born on the moon, people that live their entire lives on the moon, and that their bodies would eventually acclimate to the conditions such that they probably wouldn't be able to work very well on Earth, but people that effectively grew on the moon would be okay. But I don't know how much of the science is true on that or science fiction. But yeah, just like with the International Space Station, they have a rigorous exercise regimen they have to go through to try to maintain muscle mass and bone density as much as you can. But yeah, the longer you stay up there, it's not necessarily a long-term situation. Advocate as well. On the plus side, if they blow them up, that whole disparity of the people who died in space will be corrected. We need more oh, jeez. So grim. So grim. Why? I just and if something like that happens, Twitter arguments over such things will become it really is. Let's see. Oh, Miranda Stone, thank you so much. Current guest, Irate Alex.
Thank you.
Yes, guys, if you have not checked out Irate Alex's channel, he is one of the OG super friends of the I don't know what we want to call it, like the gang. Is it you, me, Monkey, Sinatra, Misa,
Satsu.
Tailed, Satsu. You remember Porco Dio?
Oh yeah. He actually came to my house.
He did? When was this?
Yeah. Oh, it was a few years back now.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, he came because his family lived in 2 counties over, and he decided to stop off and come stay with me for a night.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I remember Porco. Yeah, for those of you, this is old YouTube lore, sort of local social circle lore. Porco Dio was another YouTuber who did some really good videos back in the olden days, and then I don't think his channel's even around anymore. I could be mistaken, but
I don't believe that it is, which is a shame.
He did really great work, but I think he found a different. I always thought he was going into music or something. Do you know anything about that?
I don't believe so. I know he had things going on IRL, and I don't really know 100% on what it was that he was kind of barreling towards.
Okay. Well, wherever you are, Porco Dio, I hope you're doing well. Oh, and also Gutenberg. I couldn't forget Gutenberg.
Gutenberg's back on Twitter. Yeah,
he popped into one of my streams in relative terms not too long ago out of the blue and just said hello, and I was like, oh my God, it's literally Hitler. Thank you, Miranda Stone. When does Alex become irate? Oh, what ticks you off, Alex?
Oh, well, I suppose I probably would describe myself as a 100% political nihilist these days, so I don't really take much of an interest in such topics anymore. But I guess I don't know, back in the day, I called myself Irate Bear back in the day because it was like the political, social type of content that we kind of covered, and that's what would annoy me, was the ridiculous ideological insanity of your third and fourth way feminism and the other aspects that we used to cover often. And of course, things like free speech and the whole Count Dankula thing was a big thing that we would often discuss back in those days. But to these days, I found myself talking about lol cows and horror cows, really. But I find myself kind of edging away from that type of thing and moving towards, I don't actually know, really. So I'm a lot less irate these days, a lot calmer than I used to be anyway.
Until that one thing comes along that hits your nerves, and then all of a sudden.
Well, yeah.
Let's see. Understatement. Scribe-Light. Alex becomes irate when he can no longer bear it. Oh.
Can we ban Simius, please? Just for that, like,
or
at least time him out for that. Like, come on.
What, Simius?
Yeah, that a terrible.
Oh, that was understatement.
Oh, was it? Oh, Scribe and Bear.
No, Simius says Scribe and Bear Alex. I feel like I'm in the past. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I talked to Alex not too long ago, and we had sort of a misconnection, and I was like, we really should try to stream again or get on there, just talk or visit or whatever. And here we are, rock us like a hurricane. So
we can still time Simius out anyway. Just because.
And I do the Sunday stream every Sunday at around the same time. So if that lines up for Alex in the future as well, I'd be happy to have him on more.
Please, by all means. If you would like me on, I'd be more than happy to come along.
I'll be sure to let you know. Let's see. So, anything else? What, you got anything coming up? You got a stream coming up today or in the next couple of days you want to promote?
I had been considering streaming today, but I don't think that's probably going to happen now. But I'm in the process of making a video about something I've never talked about ever before in the last. Okay. How long have we been doing this for now, Scribe? Is it 7 years we've been here?
Well, I started in 2016, and you'd been doing it for some period of time just prior to that. So I'm assuming at least 7 or 8 years for you.
I started in 2016 as well.
Okay, yeah, I think you're just a couple months ahead of me. So yeah, we're it's about seven plus years now.
Yeah, oh, good God, it doesn't feel like 7 years, does it?
No, but, it doesn't. It really doesn't.
In the 7 years that I have been here, I don't think I've ever talked about philosophy or whatever. Like, I've kind of moved to the point where I just don't care about views and the ego and the money aspect of things. I just want to talk about things I want to talk about that I find interesting. So, and I at the moment, I'm interested in philosophical schools at the moment, in particular things like Stoicism and nihilism and even hedonism. So, the process of trying to get a script together for a video on nihilism and how that actually relates to me on a personal level as well. With the massive changes in my life over the last 3 years in particular. So, if you subscribe to me, look out for that. I don't know when that's coming, but it will eventually get there.
All right. Well, everybody, go check out Alex. My brain always wants to say Bears. Alex's channel, and you can find him on Twitter. If I can get this here at Irate Alex, all one word, capital I, capital A, on Twitter. And I'll be sure to I'll add all that information to the description after the stream's over with, so you guys can have that for a reference. One more thing before I start to wrap up. If you guys didn't know, I have a Discord server now. You may or may not be aware of that. If you are, great. If not, well, guess what? The only time I ever put out links to the Discord server is on these streams, and they're only available for 1 day before they expire. So it's very limited, very exclusive. And in order to prove that you actually watched the stream, you have to know the secret word for the stream. So when you go onto that landing page there with the link I put in the chat, all you have to do, if we don't recognize your nickname offhand, one of me or my moderators, you have to say the secret word so we know that you watched the show to its completion. And that word today is brick. So if you end up on there, just say brick, and we'll know that you watched the show and that you are a true fan of the channel, and you will then be elevated in access to the rest of the Discord server so you can talk to other people about silly stuff in a nice laid-back environment. Beyond that, if you'd like to hear more... Moonbricks, brick. If you'd like to hear more from me, you can find me here Thursday nights at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for TED Excellence, where I take a look at off-brand TED Talks for fun and entertainment. I call it masochism. You can also find me here, again, most Sundays, unless something else comes up, at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern for we're at right now, the Sunday stream, where I talk about things on Sundays. I'm also recently been experimenting with doing some recordings through StreamYard of things to try to like produce some actual videos instead of live streams like I used to do. Scripted stuff, we'll see. It all depends. My work schedule and the stress therein lately has been more so than usual. And so when I was thinking, gosh, maybe I'll start doing like scripted stuff again, my brain just got taken completely over, and I just want to be cathartic and vent. And that's what live streaming allows me to do, which I really appreciate. But anyway, everybody, I want to thank you all for joining us today. Let us know what you thought about the stream in the comments below, and be sure to follow us on Twitter and subscribe to the channels if you haven't already. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things, even though everyone here is so well behaved. You guys have very, very little to do. Everybody who donated either to myself or to the fundraisers at the top of the chat box, thank you guys so much for your generosity. Really do appreciate it. Alex, it is so nice to get to talk to you again and hang out.
Likewise.
And it's been too long, and we got to make it more often.
Absolutely, Scribe.
You guys, this is the guy. This is the guy. The story is long told, but this is the guy that got me into YouTube. So if you have any complaints about me, file them with him.
I'm not going to listen, but thank you, Scribe, and thank you, chat, as well, for being so kind and understanding of my blithering, stuttering ass. I appreciate that, certainly.
Yes, well, as we know, Alex is his own worst critic. But with that, everybody, thank you guys for joining us. Hope you all have a good rest of your Sunday, rest of your weekend. Hope you have a good week ahead of you. I hope you're all safe and well. If you are not well, please get well soon. And we'll see you on the next one. Take care.
Bye, everyone.